So, welcome very, very much. So good to see you, Clayton, always, and it's really great to meet you. And the book is good. I've read a great deal of it, and those praise for it are well-deserved. The writing is really good. I see that it comes from that. And in the audience, welcome. Welcome very much to Conversations. We have two guests now. The principal point of this program and the focus of this program is going to be the work of one of our guests, that being Michael Rosen. He's written a book which is titled What Else But Home? And it's got a very interesting subtitle. It is 7 Boys and an American Journey Between the Projects and the Penthouse, which is very interesting take on a sociological take on the human condition involving people from the Lower East Side, particularly around Tompkins Square Park. A really important read, and a reading of the American society and a story to be told. We're going to be talking about that, and Michael, welcome very much.
Thank you.
And on my far left is Clayton. He has needs no introduction to Conversations. We've done many programs with he and also with his lovely wife Elsa, and he's the documentarian for the Lower East Side, that creative area. He has more photos. How many do you have in your archive now?
I don't know. I certainly have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of photographs, but I don't really think of myself as the. I think of myself as one of, and you know.
I think of you as the.
Well, that's
Who
nice.
is doing better archiving of the Lower East Side video and film than Clayton Patterson? I'd like to know.
It's true.
Who is it?
That's
Who?
true.
Tell me.
Well, I have a major archive, but that's true. I do.
No, who? Okay, I think you deserve the appellate. You know, the.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate
Well,
that,
I
Harold.
think, anyway, he's a fantastic person. He's been here for a long time, and he got to be very well known at the time when there was a transformation of Tompkins Square Park going on, and the so-called gentrification that was coming to that part of the town, where a great deal of artistic talent is to be found. He's known for that, and he is a friend of Michael's, our major guest.
Well, let's
Always
back up
good
a little
to talk
bit
to you.
about that. I would say now, friend, because we certainly started off on opposite sides of the fence.
That's a very interesting dialectic.
It is, actually. I did a videotape which was 3 hours and 33 minutes, which became known as the Tompkins Square Park police riot. And at the end of that tape, there's this attack on the building, which is the Christodora. And there were two major symbols of gentrification in the Lower East Side, and one was the Christodora, and the other one was Red Square. And sort of within those parameters, it turns out that you know, Michael Rosen, the person on my right, was the person instrumental in building Red Square, and which was the first luxury apartment in the Lower East Side.
It's right on Avenue B.
No, it's actually on Houston Street.
You're at Avenue B now, aren't you?
And the Christodora, which is the ending of the Tompkins Square Park police riot, where the people attack into the building and attack the building and like that. And so what happens is that you know, I mean, it certainly took me a time to adjust and to acclimatize myself and adapt, if you like, to the gentrification, because it's a process of, you know, really being involved in the war, which we were.
How do you like being gentrified?
Well, that's what I'm getting to. I think it was a process of you know, me finally coming to grips with that, and part of coming to grips with that was to realize that the change had in fact taken place. And I think this the interesting thing about Michael and I is that it came from two sides. Because I came from the bottom up, and Michael came from the top down, because Michael is actually in the penthouse of the Christodora.
We're going to let him talk about that if ever we get a word in edgewise here, Clayton.
But I'm just going to sort of format it, and put it in the round, so to speak.
Right, that's good.
And so what happened is we had this major conflict between Michael Rosen, let's say. I mean, we'll just break it down to Michael and I. So we had this major conflict about, you know, I'm sort of anti-gentrification, and he was sort of pro, you know, I mean, in reality, Michael's ancestors and his earlier people came through the Lower East Side.
Okay, we're going to let him talk about that. I was just about to have him ask him to share his background. And everything.
But I'll sort of set it up.
Clayton wants to talk about, Clayton wants to mention Red Square, and I appreciate that.
All right, and set up the context.
I appreciate that.
And it's an
store windows.
And it's an important context on a world scale. It could
but it's important for a multiple of reasons, and so it's important that these two people eventually come together and become friends, and that's the point that I'm getting to. So we have this sort of situation where we have extreme conflict. We have very radical on one side, the street, then we have radical on the other side. The
very demure, quiet me.
And so these things eventually, and it took me a few years to eventually get into the
to walk through our front door.
Let me tell you, you got a great book. You got a great book, and you guys are here and everything. I want to know who's got the option on the movie. Have you sold the option on the movie?
And
who's going to play Clayton? Who's going to play you?
Well, we're working on it.
Yeah, I think we got the talent pool
But just
right
to sort
here.
of set this up, because it's important, because this is still a very hot issue, and there's certain people downtown that are anti-me for being the radical that I was, and there are people that are anti-Michael for being the developer he was. So this is still a very hot topic, and so this is still, in a lot of people's minds, some people's, a yin and yang. So the question you asked me is, yes, I eventually got used to the fact that gentrification is here and things have changed. And so, when you're kind of involved in a protracted war, basically, which is what it was, it takes time to sort of shed those emotions and feelings. But eventually what happened is Michael, I'll be really quick about this, but Michael eventually came into saving this building, which is called Charis, which is a very important building.
I know Charis.
Let me just finish here for one moment, Mike. And then I'm going to be out of it. Then I'm going to be out of it.
Oh.
And so what happened eventually...
Don't go away mad.
I'm not.
Oh.
So what happened eventually is that I became to know Michael. Mm-hmm. And then here's another switch that's a major switch in the story. And that is, so you have Michael in the penthouse. So now we have this dynamic of Michael and myself, two different forms of oppositions. But the other thing that happens is that Michael eventually, through a baseball game, meets these kids from the projects. Now, these kids from the projects are really kind of come from troubled backgrounds. They come from sort of like really inner city troubled situations. And so one of the kids saw his father murdered. So we're talking real trials.
Real honest to God human drama, yeah.
Real human drama.
We're going to let him talk about that.
And so what happened is that, so eventually what happens is Michael, these boys become Michael becomes foster parents to these boys. Mm. And so he eventually even gets them to college.
Yeah, right. Great story.
Now
okay, thank you.
Now I'm finished.
No, you're not finished. You can pipe in and everything you wanted to lay. That would be like
Clayton's too smart to be finished.
Yeah, right. He's too smart to be finished. He'll never do that. But Michael, welcome very much.
Thank you.
And I wonder maybe you could share your background a little bit. Maybe
Sure.
you could tell your story and about the book and everything, and then we'll talk about some of the ramifications.
Well, Clayton's
and we have a little clip we're going to show.
Clayton's and my worlds did interact and collide in ways that it took me quite a while to recognize.
Uh-huh.
I did, in a previous lifetime, develop property on the Lower East Side.
Okay.
I developed this building called Red Square on Houston Street. It has a big Lenin on the top and a quite long commercial wing. And it was a symbolic building in the neighborhood because we were the first luxury rental building, and we developed the first.
Was it renovated from a previous?
No, it was from the ground up,
okay.
And it was probably the largest outlay of capital in 30, 40 years on the Lower East Side.
Where is it? I'm not
familiar. On the north side of Houston, between A and B. It has a large Lenin on the top, waving to Wall Street, a monumental Lenin, and Tibor Kalman's
political Lenin.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, and the oppressor Lenin.
Yes, right.
And the intellectual Lenin.
Right,
and the Kromowski-eating Lenin. And then I did move into the penthouse of the Cristadora, one of the penthouses, and we began I'd say 6 years ago to landmark a building, the old Charis El Bohio, former PS 64, and people kept telling me I should meet this man Clayton Patterson, I should meet this man Clayton Patterson. And I actually remember the moment we did meet because we were tabling on Avenue A to get people to sign postcards to send to the mayor to landmark the building.
Okay, good.
Now, before that, years before that, we had met our older son, Ripton, in the summer of '98, after Tompkins Square reopened.
Right.
Right. It was almost a decade after it had been shut down by Dinkins. And,
it was shut down for a year.
Yeah, to renovate. And when it reopened, it was beautiful. And it was beautiful on the backs of having kicked out a couple hundred homeless people and all the other aspects of gentrification that occurred. But our son Ripton brought us onto a blacktop baseball field, and he was the only white kid in the game.
How old was he?
He was 7, almost 8.
7th grade.
And he didn't, he just saw kids playing baseball.
Oh, is that on B Avenue?
On the north side of the park, the northwest corner, so call it 10th and A.
10th and
And
A.
we live on B.
You
so
live on B.
afterwards
I see,
he invited kids home. and 10 or a dozen kids came. And Clayton's absolutely
right.
right.
From a pickup ball game.
From a pickup ball game.
Right.
When they picked him in the second game, they pointed at him and said, "The white nigga," which is all of a sudden we realized that this diversity that we had wanted to find in our lives, but didn't because my wife and I are middle-class white people, and our friends were middle-class white people. All of a sudden, the neighborhood came back to our house, and really came back from that ball game. And Ripton went back to the game the next day. Kids came back to our house. Ripton went back to the game. And the trajectory of my story, as Clayton said, was meeting on that day until, in the end, the last of the 5 bigger boys who moved into our house went off to college.
There's some territory there. Because
a bit of territory.
Yeah, a lot
like
there.
5 years of territory.
What a story. You were inclined to, when that happened, them coming, the pickup game, and then they're coming back to your place, there would have been a lot of people saying, well, I'm sorry, we're all booked up and so forth. You were of a certain mindset to say, okay, Ripton, let's go with your friends, or let's go.
He invited the kids home.
Yeah, but you were with him.
Yeah, of
you were
course.
At that event.
We
you
were
remember.
We were the only parents watching the game, as it were.
You and your wife then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and he's 7. So
he's 7. He's almost 8.
And a lot of middle-class people of a 7-year-old kid who says, we want to bring home the gang, would say, sorry, I've got things to do. I can make a cherry pie or whatever. But you were not of that. Were you socially interesting in terms of your concern with interesting people? Are you intellectually curious? Or?
At that moment we weren't thinking anything.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get, your mindset.
No. We had a son who wanted friends to come home, new friends.
He didn't have friends of his own that had grown from kindergarten?
Actually, I talk about that in the book, but Ripton didn't easily make friends. We were sending him to a Jewish school on the Upper West Side at the time. And so he certainly had no friends in the neighborhood. And he wanted the kids to come home, and so we said, great.
You'd been living there for quite a while.
We had been living there, almost a decade at that point.
How come
almost
you're in the Lower East Side? I mean, I'm just asking. You could live. You could live in Central Park.
We used to live on the Upper East Side, and we wanted diversity.
You wanted diversity.
We wanted ethnic, economic, creative diversity. Do you remember the lady? She died a couple years ago, and she spoke at the Charas El Bohio Landmark Commission. And she used to wear boots, and she had cut off pull-up pants. I can't remember her name.
I'm sure I photographed her because I photographed that day. But
she was wonderful. And she spoke about the Lower East Side being always a welcoming neighborhood. She gave this incredible speech at the Landmark Commission when we had the testimony for landmarking this building. And there is a history of welcoming in the Lower East Side. And
a lot of creativity.
And a tremendous amount. And part of the sadness of typical gentrification is the lack of that welcoming.
Right, and a lot of the attitude of gentrification is to be away from all that.
Right.
Up in a tower somewhere, protected from it, and voted. And you did not have that mindset.
Well,
apparently.
that's not our mindset, and I think it's not my friend's mindset, and it's part of, and it's a misnomer. I think it's not a mindset of a lot of, at least the earlier people who were gentrifiers who moved to the Lower East Side.
Yeah, they wanted to be around some artists.
They wanted to be around artists.
Yeah, so that's
but there's such a dichotomy.
Right. That's another characteristic of bankers, are people who get to be moneyed. Let's say they would get it entrepreneurially or something. They then get, I mean, that can be kind of boring, writing figures and spreadsheets and so forth. And it's kind of boring and dull and that kind of stuff. And you want to be mixing, and a lot of people want to be mixing with the artists and the lively set, as it were.
But in our case, it wasn't just mixing with the artistic creative aspect. It was also, for us, encountering Dominican, Puerto Rican, African American worlds in terms of the kids who moved in and became our sons.
Good for you. I thank you. That's good. Often it happens because artists usually are given short shrift in our society. And so artists usually, it's a movable feast because artists usually have to have, like artists, painters. Look at what happened. Look at what happened to Vincent. You know, you never could sell a single painting, and so they're struggling. So they have to have space. So they'll go someplace where the rents are cheap or something. And they usually, the arts are associated. If a young lady comes home and says, "Daddy, I'm going to marry an artist," he would say, he's a banker, he'd say, my God, you're going to be starving. Because the starving artist is altogether too real, because we give so little attention to the things cultural, and all of the attention in terms of material success go to those that are in the real world of finance. And
I mean, there's 2 points here, though. First of all, I'll just make a quick sidebar, and that was that basically what Vincent van Gogh you're referring to, he comes really from a privileged class, so it's really kind of a misnomer to sort of make his struggle as deep as the people do.
Good point, Ed.
But
Good
the other
point,
part that I wanted to get to is that mixture of ethnicity that Michael was talking about, with the children that he brought into his home. These are not artists, these are children.
Okay.
One of the children actually had seen his father getting murdered. So now you have Puerto Rican, black, Dominican kids being brought into the house. His wife is a doctor.
Yeah.
So they're definitely, you know, upper middle class or whatever. And so it isn't just this ethnicity of artists. These are children. And
I know that. I wasn't making the point only of artists, but it was a different environment other than the yuppie environment or the
and
upper
also
middle
with
class
the artists,
environment.
you meet them socially. This is actually bringing the kids into the house, troubled kids, and basically become a foster parent. And so you have this, you know, bringing this ethnicity into the house. And that's sort of like the greatness of Michael's book, is not only well written, but it's also like the Moby Dick story, this big sort of whale, and it kind of talks about, you know, a lot of different politics here. You know, the politics of class, the politics of race, and it comes
hugely important in the whole world.
Yeah, and so here we have this sort of struggle in America between different classes and different races, which we still have even with Obama. And so here you have Michael sort of encompassing all of that. So his book is kind of like a symbol of that unification, and it's a new way to look at the future. It's a new way to look at politics. It's a new way to look at people. And I think with Obama being president now, we can see where this integration is actually starting to happen. But he came from, you know, he eventually went to Harvard and like that. Michael actually brought these children in that came from very troubled backgrounds, you know, projects, couldn't, most of the time not staying at home. And these are kids, these are children.
Yeah, and that's much of the world.
And he had actually brought them up and got them to college. So we're talking about a multi-level thing here. It's not just a book that's well written, but it's also a point of view about how to change the world, how to make something happen, how to encompass people. That's really what we're talking about. And that's why I went on in the beginning a little long about the difference between Michael and I, and that was the difference that we eventually came into grips with, because we've now neutralized that, the gentrification, anti-gentrification, so we've neutralized that. And then within that, the gentrifier, he now has come at it from a whole other end of bringing these kids from the street up to the penthouse. So we're talking on a multi-level layer here. And that's sort of like the real bonus of the book. And it's not, like I say, it's not just that it's well written, but it has a multiple, you know, political points of view. And to look into that book and start thinking about how to philosophically start, you know, encompassing this and getting America to embrace this, we can change the whole social structure of America through books and like this book.
Yeah,
and that's the importance of it. It's not just a book, it's Moby Dick.
It's not right. Can
I say something?
Absolutely, go ahead.
I want to say, I love the artist in Clayton. Most people look at it and say, wow, that's a heck of a story. 3 times Clayton said, it's not just that it's well written. I like that, thank you. Because when you write nonfiction, people focus often not on the writing, but on the story. And I wanted to write, I knew I had a good story to tell. I wanted to write it in a beautiful way also.
Yeah, and you have. Yeah,
thank you.
Congratulate you on that.
So I really...
And so it's nonfiction.
It's
so
nonfiction.
I was going to say, not only is it well written, but the life was led. So the life as an experience was led by you, and an experience that you had is the real thing, the real story, in a very real sense, for which I can congratulate you. I wonder if I could ask you, does your comfort zone of being in the upper middle class, let's say, or upper class, does it go back family? Does it go back a few generations?
Well,
were you entrepreneurial? There's a difference between somebody who's entrepreneurial, I think, and those who've been born with a silver spoon in their mouth, that kind of thing.
Right. My dad came back from Korea, and I remember I grew up in the very beginning in upstate New York, which Gloversville.
Oh, yeah.
I don't admit it because I say we moved to Vermont after that, so I pretend I'm a Vermonter from the beginning.
Gloversville's got a proud history, does it?
Gloversville has a tough history.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's been decimated. No, my dad came back and really struggled to make a living, as Clayton and I have spoken about, because both of our families came from, both of us came from tough backgrounds.
Oh, you came from a tough background personally?
Economically.
Economically, well, that's the main thing, okay.
Yeah.
So you were entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Successful,
yes.
not legacy.
No, not legacy.
You got to Harvard?
No, I went to the University of Pennsylvania.
University of Pennsylvania, hell of a school.
It's not a bad place.
Did you study at Wharton or anything?
I did 5 degrees there. I did a doctorate. I did 3 masters.
Doctorate in what, if I may?
Yeah, from the Wharton School, the business
Wharton?
school. Yeah.
Did you study with Lawrence Klein?
No. No.
He was a major figure there, econometrics.
He was. Yeah, I did an MBA, an MA, a PhD at Wharton. I did a master's in anthropology. This is really an ethnography.
Well, I'm very interested in the so you did economics there. Did you do that if it was hard Scrabble?
Yeah, I didn't.
See, it's hard hard Scrabble from Gloversville. We didn't have food. We were eating lard. That kind of thing. Was
Actually,
it that bad?
we didn't. No, we weren't eating lard. We were eating food that I didn't want to eat.
What was
I'm
that?
sorry, Mom. It's the truth. She knows.
Steak or what?
No. My mom used to make this thing with tomato soup and rice and cut up hot dogs, which I hated. And I remember
half of America was raised on that. I think. Yeah.
Look, we weren't on the street. My parents worked very hard and really made a middle class life for us.
Middle class.
His father eventually became a professional, and so Michael went through that struggle of father coming back from Korea, but eventually his father becomes a certified public accountant.
He was certified. Okay, that's professional.
But Michael also was extremely smart. Because,
that's why I asked.
Was once upon a time.
Yeah, you cut it out.
But actually, I think he went even quickly from an undergraduate to a PhD program, right?
Yeah, you did PhD in economics?
No.
In finance.
From the Wharton School, from the management department.
From management. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's something. PhD from Wharton is a big thing.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I know, but I mean that was something.
It was a long time ago.
And you did that. The family was educationally
my
encouraging
parents?
And warm, friendly.
Yeah, I think when I decided to go off and do a doctorate, I think my parents wondered, what's that about?
You would have had to have done, undergrad and masters and everything before that.
No, actually, I was in a program at Penn where after my first year as an undergrad, I skipped the rest of my undergraduate education. I was invited into a program that let me into grad school right away. It's a good way to mess up children.
Oh, well, you think so?
Yes, I think it's a terrible thing in retrospect.
I don't mean to press, but that's going from freshman to doctorate. I mean, were you gifted, or were you seen as gifted?
Well, I'm hardly. I was seen as probably, I don't know. That's
you don't want to talk about it, apparently.
Well, let's put it this way. There's very few people that do that. There's very few people that go from a 1-year undergraduate program into a PhD program. Right, so just figure it out from there.
And
he's being modest.
Wharton's a hell of a school.
Right.
I mean,
but even if you did it at CUNY, people just don't do that.
No, that's good. And you've got that background, so it's smart, and you were intelligent, you worked, and you got a PhD.
So what led to this? What led to this was...
Actually, I was trying to get you pegged or something, because you were not of what money. You weren't of a Rockefeller run or something like that. You were hard Scrabble. You know hard Scrabble. And you were entrepreneurial, apparently, when you got out into doing things management, doing that thing. So it's a different kind of mindset than somebody who's got a big legacy trust fund that they live off, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But I made some money along the way.
And that you then could know about the Dominican, and those people are likely, and the idea of the people in the Castle Keep of some gated community that wants to be separated from the mass of the world.
No, hardly.
No,
hardly. I wanted to embrace the world.
Much of the people do that are in that. In fact, some of them want to escape that exactly. They want to separate themselves from the others, particularly if they've had some acquaintanceship with it, because they want to get above all else away from. So I'm just trying to get your own mindset and how you got to be in such an interesting position, because that's what the story is about.
My mindset is my heroes are people like Fred Shuttlesworth and Martin Luther King and people who tried to make a better world. They really are. Okay. And my heroes were not the people who were the bankers and the merchant bankers, but the people who were dedicated their lives to making a better world.
Why didn't you do a PhD in social work rather than finance or in management?
At the time?
Yeah.
Because I thought that my life was going to take a different route. I thought that I might, lead a different type of life than I've ended up living.
Then you led a life of entrepreneurial development and success.
I was a professor for 5 years at NYU. That's what I did with the PhD.
And you were teaching what?
In the management department. I was teaching.
School?
It was before it was the Stern School.
Okay, yeah.
I was teaching undergraduates, MBAs, PhDs.
Oh, good for you. Do you know Baumel by any chance?
No.
William Baumel?
No.
He's at Stern.
I don't think was there when I was there.
Oh, okay.
Or if so...
Microeconomics, you know. Did you do economic theory?
Not as a graduate level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you don't have a great deal of thought about the meltdown and Mr. Geithner and all that?
No. Well, he does from the point of view of he had a business eventually on Wall Street, and the collapse of 9/11 then switched him into this whole other mode.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was 9/11 that changed his life as well. Not only the boys, but 9/11.
Clayton's right. My business was destroyed in September 11th, and that really gave me an opportunity to reevaluate how I wanted to live.
Well, congratulations on having done what you did.
And I decided I wanted to write.
And your ventures, and you wanted to write, right?
Wanted to write,
okay.
Yeah.
Film? Have you thought of film or not?
No. I for a year after 9/11, we were involved with shutting down my business, and and because it was public, so there was besides the fact the business didn't exist, the corporation still existed.
Yeah.
And I was actually standing in a hotel in Hanoi, in the Metropole, where Graham Greene and Somerset Maugham worked, and I had an epiphany that all those people who died, if they had wanted to, a lot of them could have pursued different lives. I don't want to say all because that's wrong. Right. The janitors couldn't, but the guys who were the hotshot traders could have.
Yeah.
And I realized I wanted to write. So for a year, I rode my bike around the neighborhood with a copy of The Snow Leopard, Peter Matthewson, and Michael Herr's book, Dispatches.
He wrote about the American Indian really well.
Matthewson, he writes about everything very well.
Yeah.
And from that whole process, eventually this emerged.
And this is your major work? Have you published other things?
I've published
academically.
academically.
It's all non-fiction writing?
No, I've written poetry, but I realize I'm a mediocre poet.
Really?
I'm a much better prose writer.
Really? Okay. Well, you're a good prose writer.
So this came out of
that. Congratulations. And you've had a hell of an experience with these kids. So it started with the 7-year-old pickup ball game that brought other people in, and they become part of your family.
They became part of. They became our sons. They became our sons.
But there's a lot of integration with that. You know, I mean, you have social, obviously, and then you also have like ethnicity. I mean, he's a white guy. I mean, who he in there with his white nigger? So you got that thing going on.
But white Jewish guy.
White Jewish guy
as well.
He does
have Jewish going.
Right, white Jewish guy. And so here, I mean, we're looking at project kids, and so we're looking at it from the street. And then we're also looking at kids coming into this place and seeing unlimited of whatever you want. You know, you want a glass of milk? Okay, no problem. You want 2 glasses of milk, 3 glasses of milk, 9 glasses of milk? And so you have all of that, all of a sudden unlimited, we can satisfy your wants. You want 10 glasses of milk, you can have 10 glasses of milk. You want pizza, you can have pizza. So that was, so you can imagine how difficult and how amazing that was for these kids. So the first day it's like going to Disneyland.
Yeah, right.
So all of a sudden you got video games, you got all the food you want to eat, and it's like, oh my God, where am I? You also have this view of the whole neighborhood. You can walk out the door. You're in the tallest building in the neighborhood. You got a penthouse. And it's so the minds of those children. But you also have their, they have to adapt to that. So, you know, maybe once in a while the kids are stealing something.
Huge story.
Because, you know, they have to become used to the fact that, well, if you want it, it's there.
Huge story.
And then we are reading Moby Dick with them. Then we're going book shopping, and we're sitting around the table reading Moby Dick.
That must have happened over.
And then, you know, and then I become involved with the neighborhood in a activist way, in a community organizer way. So the guys, the kids who are now young men, are meeting Clayton, and they're meeting other artists in the neighborhood, and they're meeting politicians in the neighborhood, and on and on and on.
Everybody in the Lower East Side knows Clayton. There's nobody in the Lower East Side that doesn't know Clayton.
Well, and
I don't think, you know.
Right.
Maybe a couple of guys up in a tall Castle Keep somewhere.
No, I can tell you the guys in the Castle Keep know
They know
Clayton.
him too, and the police and so on, because he's a presence, He's one. But what a story to tell. It must have happened over a period of time, because it ended up, some of those became, in a certain sense, almost foster family members.
Well, they became sons.
Oh, they became sons.
They called him Dad.
That's interesting.
Right. Maybe not legally adopted, but psychologically they called him Dad.
Maybe
so he
more
became
important.
The father.
Even.
And these are kids without fathers.
Right. Okay.
So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of adjustments there. So that's the big whale.
Yeah, it must have been over a long period of time.
It is the whale.
It is.
Well, Sure. I mean, they're still our guys.
Ongoing. Yeah, right.
They're still our guys. They're still angry and loving. We're still angry and loving and angry.
But did they come and live in the place with you?
Yes.
They didn't live in the projects.
Every
projects.
boy for a period of time ended up moving in with us. One guy still does. A couple guys were renting rooms for them near their schools or in Brooklyn. And two of the guys live back with their moms. But we're still in everyone's life.
What a learning.
They're the only kids in their families that went to college. I mean,
That's true.
Even these kids themselves could have never even dreamed of them going to college. Not only that, but the teachers in the schools would have never seen these kids going to college. These were not college
Clayton's
kids.
Right.
Yeah, James Joyce once said, "History is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken." And it used to be that it was only a tiny group of people who ever even got the thought of going to college in, let's say, England or even in the United States early. My dad was in a class of 26. There were 40 people in the law class at the University of Michigan. It's only just been where everybody gets to college.
Yeah.
I mean, it's expanding, and now there's other opportunities for people to do learning.
Right, but now if you don't do that...
We disagree with James Joyce. We're trying to change the nightmare. That's the whole purpose of the book. We're getting away from the nightmare.
He had Daedalus say, from which I am attempting to awaken, and it may be humanity is caught up in a thing where they have to awaken from, because it's always been a few people are in charge.
1%.
The emperors of Rome, I think, had little concern for the serfs or the kings. The serfs are walling around in the mud and
or the
everything.
Bloombergs.
Well, then it gets to be bankers and the gentrified elites in their castle keeps on gentrified New York City or in that. So there's always a few who run everything. But now there's something else going on in the wind, blowing in the wind, and this metaphor for being in concern with and actually feeling and being concerned with the people en masse is something that's very much operative in terms of the present world. Attention being given to the children in Africa. What does a woman think who has to, which of the kids she's going to let starve to death?
Yeah.
Because there's not enough food.
Yeah.
When we know there is the ability to have enough food, but our system is not allowing us to do. This is a theme.
Well, that's
what we're technologically augmented and capable of doing in terms of bringing real, liberating potentiality for everybody to realize their full potential rather than have to put up with the slings and arrows of an outrageous history.
That's Clayton and the Whale.
Right, but let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to America. And why would this woman who's a doctor want to spend?
It's a metaphor for the world.
Right, but spend her time with this child night after night after night, these different children, teaching them to read, teaching them, doing their homework with them. You know, this woman's a doctor. She just worked all day. You know, she's coming home and she's spending all this time at the kitchen table going through the homework with the kids and the books.
Well, that's a metaphor for we just went through an economic thing after September 20, 2008, and they were going to have to do everything, 3-page thing to the president to get everything changed, and it's a metaphor for they go through a whole process, and Geithner, all the banks, AIG and everything, they get their bonuses, and the people are being foreclosed now.
Right.
So you do not have concern. They don't care. George Carlin would say, the people in charge don't care about the masses of the people.
But that's what the book is about.
Distance yourself from them. And this book is one where there can be a meeting of those two.
You want to stop juvenile delinquency, you want to stop crime, you want to stop poverty, well, start integrating with neighborhood. And that's exactly what they did. And they're bringing these people to their house, and they're bringing them to their home.
But you know how they integrate neighborhood? Usually they go out to the suburbs where there's a big gated community. They can separate themselves
but that's
from
the beauty of
mass.
That's the beauty
of your book.
Well, and not just my book.
Your life.
No, and also our neighborhood.
Yeah, okay.
And what our neighborhood, in a sense, can show the rest of America. Or other parts of America. I shouldn't say the rest of America. Neighborhoods like ours.
I think it could show the world. I think there's a metaphor that goes beyond, because you've got a group that is in charge, lives well. You ever see Slumdog Millionaire yet?
Yeah,
guys living, and they're usually gangsters.
Yeah.
Or they're doing something illegal in order to get that protected thing. And that's the world. So what's there at Tompkins Square is maybe more we got a little Franklin Roosevelt came in, or a little something gets through and everything. But in the world, it's even worse. And the metaphor is one that is the major one confronting mankind. How can we bridge the gap in a way to where, and you're
That's why we're doing
it.
the program, because this program is on the internet and it goes worldwide. So what we're talking to is the world here. This point of view in the book and what we're discussing is worldwide.
And I still want to know who's got the option on the movie. I want
there
to know,
isn't.
Is it Spielberg?
There
Spielberg out knocking at your door?
I haven't gotten any calls yet.
Well, don't leave that. Keep that open. We have, if we can get it to work and everything, we have a little clip that you have up on YouTube. Mm-hmm. One of the problems is that we don't have enough time. We always run out of time. Mm-hmm. And you're too damned interesting. That's your problem. You shouldn't be so
and my friend Clayton.
Clayton, yeah. But anyway, it's a YouTube thing, and we could play that. It's you talking to a group of people, apparently.
Talking
and
mostly to women.
Mostly to women, but it was a beautiful, well-edited, put-together piece. It's a YouTube version, and we're going to try and play that. But maybe you could, in a certain sense, set it up, what it was. And
sure.
And let's show it 5 minutes or so.
Sure. I'll set it up, quite honestly, is I wanted to do something that went beyond... race and class can be scary to people.
I'll say.
And it is scary to people.
It is.
And I wanted to do something that reached, God willing, not to pablum, but to something that would touch a greater number of Americans, a greater number of people. So I wanted to talk about fatherhood.
Okay.
And so we did.
Huge subjects,
we did a video on fatherhood.
And you were reading.
Yeah, I was reading, not my normally dynamic, charismatic self. I was reading a script that we had written.
Yeah, it's not your normal self, right? Like Laurence Olivier.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's doing that. So wait a minute, we're trying to set up this film, and we have to be disciplined here, Clayton. We have to get the script in. We have to get it done.
That's right.
We're running a film here now, you see. So in the studio, if you can push the magic button and start the YouTube video, you can start that now, and let's see if it'll work. And take it away now if you can. It's with Michael Rosen, who is our guest. And there we go, and let it go, and okay. Now they'll pump the sound in here in a minute, the sound.
See the snowfall.
Don't talk unless you want to. Mics may be open.
Here's the view from his balcony.
These days I think about my dad a lot. How young he was then, what our fathers faced in their lives, how they learned to be fathers, were good fathers, and sometimes not. The lessons we're supposed to teach our children, the love to give, the support we're counted on for. Though mostly it's not discussed, also about the manliness. Hearing the richness in your father's voice, carrying you from the car, mostly asleep after a long ride home, how he smelled of grass and leaves after raking the lawn in autumn, his breath billowing on a cold winter morning, making your snowman, and falling in the snow for angels. You remember a nick or two after he shaved. We do bleed, with tenderness too. We were raising 2 sons, and our oldest joined a summer sandlot game he'd seen in the small park across from our home. He wanted his teammates to come home after the game, 10 or a dozen boys. We were following the instincts of a child, following his honesty. 5 boys from that game, a little older, eventually became part of our family. 7 boys became brothers. We grew to have 7 sons. One has become a wonderful dad. I've not always been the best at that. I've lost my patience. I've yelled and it only scared my children and then scared me. Seas of emotions come and go. I've disappointed my wife sometimes. I've never wanted to. We reach milestones. Our oldest son's bedroom door open now all the time, his bed made and empty. His first day of school wasn't that long ago. The first Little League games to what in seasons became suddenly his last high school game. A last report card, but a new beginning for the young adult who not very long ago was our newest baby. Our parents couldn't have felt quite the same, did they? Because they seemed so adult. Our oldest son's grown to be much bigger than any of us. I was the last to hug him. I wanted the pictures of our life to run through my head. The day we met, the day we took him home, fishing side by side. In grade school, for a class project, he wrote, "If you get writer's block, don't stop in the beginning. Don't be afraid to jump into the sea of ideas." And I was convinced he was a genius, at least for a moment or more than a few. Maybe it's been the same with you along your way. Painting from an art class, a math test, a role in a high school play. Then our youngest son knew he and I had hugged enough. He let go and walked off towards his new home. Beneath a long arch and white colonnade, a brick walkway, and he grew smaller. Others stepped in the way and I lost my son. Then he was there, then not, and then it was time for us to go home. Our journeys have continued the way they do. You pay the bills, go to the movies, visit with your friends. Accidentally, you discover that stuffed animal they were so attached to, a puppy or a monkey. You pick it up, smell and feel its softness against your face, and life floods back, memories and deep love. Maybe you think of a moment when you might have asked more questions, paid a touch more attention to a glance or word that seemed uncertain. But past that, in all the hours, in all the devotion, you held young lives to growing up true. I am a father now with sons I think about a lot, and a son to a father I now better understand, his fear, his uncertainty, and I go into the fear and uncertainty with the courage of caring for young men who will do the best for their children, the best we can, to give and be present and dependable, to listen more, then listen again. What's right one moment changes later on. They grow and need other things. We dry tears, we pick them up when they fall, send them on their way. They go. Every once in a while, they turn around, walk back, and hug us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful piece of film, well edited and everything. Maybe you can start getting interested in that, but you got good people doing that. Yeah,
good.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out one thing, too.
That's
when you
beautiful,
really look at it,
beautiful, yeah.
is that if you really look at those boys now, they look self-assured, they look middle class, right. They have good posture, they look healthy, they just do not look like project kids anymore. So that whole socialization process of just hanging around with Michael and living there, you can see the actual change by those kids. You know, those kids are not dressed like the thug life. They don't have that kind of posture. They look self-assured. They're self-confident. That's a whole other look that those boys wouldn't have if they weren't there.
It's the major problem confronting humanity. Whether it's they got a movie out now, Precious, about right. And then or it's the major problem in Afghanistan. It's the major problem in Somalia. It's the major problem in Yemen.
One of the major problems in America.
It's the major problem in the world.
One of the major
to make it so that people will be able to have what you being in touch with them and you learning from them. You were learning as much as they were learning, and so forth. And toward a dream of a world, in a certain sense, where everybody could be able to realize their full given potentiality, rather than being concerned with the things that are so immediately the lot of so much of world humanity, because we don't have a system that's able to let us. Do you think?
So these boys are
somebody
socialized.
Once
One
said,
of the most important,
wait a minute. Somebody once said Jesus is purported to have said, "The poor shall always be with us." Now the poor can be material, and that's very important. That's something that we can address. Mental. But also it's emotional and it's all the rest of it. But the poor will always be with us. Is it necessary that the poor will always be with us? I think that we're at a time where we may be transcending that thing, Dickensian kind of conditions.
But that's the point that I'm bringing out
here.
That's
the point of the whole movie. That's what I'm saying. The movie is a metaphor. What a great movie.
I don't even have to be here today,
no,
do I? The two of you guys
You've
can.
already done it. You've done it already.
Here's the point. One of the most difficult things about a young kid coming out of the projects is being socialized. You know, when they walk into an office, they just don't have the look. They don't have those social skills.
They call it.
So all of a sudden, these kids have that precious gift of presentation of self, and you can see that in that picture. And that's a gift from living with Michael and being with Michael.
That should be the heritage of everybody.
It's not the heritage
Everybody
of me.
should have that.
I come from the working class. I show up and people think I'm a biker. I'm not. But I mean, they don't have that.
You could pass for a biker.
I could.
Yeah.
And I do.
No, he looks. It's a different look.
Yeah, it's Monty
I think of it more as Santa Claus. Actually,
Santa Claus is good. Yeah, Santa Claus is good. Where's your sleigh?
That's my buddy.
Yeah, right.
But
it's just not white, but it's getting there.
These kids don't have that.
Yeah, but congratulations enormously. You learned a lot from them, huh?
Oh, I still do.
Yeah, right.
I still do. We were 3 of us. 3 of the guys and I were talking at the University of District of Columbia about a month ago.
Yeah.
And the audience was young people like them.
Yeah.
You know, that's University of DC is largely minority kids.
I'm not familiar with it. Okay. Yeah.
Well, it's like BMCC in Washington DC. And so one of the people in the audience asked one of the kids a question, and they said something like, Mike is our pops. You know, we looked at Mike as, they call me their white pops, their Jewish pops. And one of them said, when I was 12, I was already the man in my house because there was no man, and I was big enough that my mother couldn't tell me what to do anymore. And I thought, wow, for all the years, I never understood that. When they became that big, 12 years old, 11, 13, they were the only men in their house, and they could do what they wanted. And that's not a healthy place for a 12 or 13-year-old kid. Not that families have to stay married, but dads really do have to stay involved in families, or else things go off course.
I had a dad. He died when I was young. I mean, when he was too young. He died at 48. He was born in 1899. That was the average age for a person born in 1899. It's not 48.
Yeah.
And and I had a sister. I had 2 sisters. And I was and my older sister was so much older that it was in a whole other universe.
Right.
But my other sister was bigger than me.
Right.
And a year or so, and she used to beat up on me regular when I was little.
Well, and Clayton.
And then what happened is, I'm just trying to give you a sad story about the human condition, because here she could beat up, and then all of a sudden I got to be bigger than her.
Right.
So I could have beaten up on her.
Right.
You know? And my daddy put me in a chair and he said, "Son, are you listening?" I said, "Yes, sir, I'm listening," right? He said, "Son, are you listening?" A gentleman. He always said, "You're going to be a gentleman." I'm sorry I failed.
Did he?
That. Yeah, he used to say, "You're going to be a gentleman."
That's
a
nice story.
And he said, it's like old-fashioned stuff. And he says, "A gentleman, and you're going to be a gentleman, never," did you hear me, son? Never. Did you hear me? Are you listening? Yes, sir. Never what would be comparable to what they call lay hands on a lady.
Yeah.
Ever. Never. I'm thinking ninjas, you know, ninjas coming at me with stuff. But I mean, the point is that that's a way of getting a way of thinking.
I've never spoken to my kids.
And I thought
You're
it wasn't
be
fair.
A gentleman.
I said she had the advantage over me, and that you get the vengeance. But it wasn't vengeance because we loved it. It was love. It was all love.
Yeah.
And everything. But it was just spatting. But I thought, now I can do it. Damn it, I should have the right to be able to. And he laid that on me. So I just throw it out as a little.
That's the kind of parenting that Michael and his wife did with these kids, and just being there as symbols, as parents,
as
and
father.
Giving them guidance, as
and
father.
mother,
and mother,
and mother,
and
yeah,
mother, of
right,
course.
Yeah,
yeah,
you were looking at fatherhood particularly.
Well, I spoke about fatherhood in the video because I'm a man.
Often. Yeah, right.
You know, unfortunately, these guys' moms, by and large, they don't have the same resources we have.
No.
And that's a tragedy in and of itself. It's
Absolutely.
not that we deserve the resources any more than anyone else.
But
we have
what,
them.
White?
My wife and I.
Oh, you.
Or
you,
by
you
comparison, you can do white and non-white juxtapositions. You can do upper, lower, middle class juxtapositions. All the dichotomies.
All the dichotomies of
the other
class.
thing too is
and the concentration of wealth in the United States now is greater that between the haves and the have-nots, the few haves.
Well, New York City,
we do not live in a democracy. We live in a plutocracy in economic terms. It always has been. We shouldn't even use the word democracy. It's so different between the projects and the penthouse in real terms, outside of a few examples.
I'll give you another real term,
Harold. But the thing is, the concentration of the wealth and the ownership of the capital assets increasingly responsible for production is greater than it was in 1789 France. Between the Versailles, the big.
Is
wings.
that true?
Yeah, it is true. That's
I believe it.
True.
But let's take the biggest.
We still live with all those contradictions of a system that's not in place to bring what you would call democracy and the full flowering of each individual human soul and mobility to its full capability, like we may have to get to here at the end time, if we're at an end time of the old system.
Or no, we can go back to serfs, but let's look at it from another. You're always looking.
We're
at it from
in serfs now.
You're looking at it from the royal point of view. Let's take it from the street point of view. Let's take it from the neighborhood. Let's take it from the biggest industry in upstate New York. That's prisons. One of the largest population. Let me finish for a minute. One of the largest populations in New York State's prison system. Are you listening, Harold?
Black and brown.
No, it's not black and Hispanic. It's Lower East Side. Lower East Side. One of the largest prison populations in New York State is Lower East Side. Let's not talk black and Hispanic or whatever. Let's talk Lower East Side.
That would
include his
Harlem
kids.
Too.
Of course it's black and Hispanic.
Yeah.
But it's the Lower East Side.
Yeah.
His kids
He's right.
would have been that's where they were heading. Yeah. Do you know that there's no famous Puerto Ricans basically from the Lower East Side? The whole history has been really eclipsed and overlooked. I mean, there's a few, like Nuyorican Poetry Cafe, and we have Bimbo Rivas.
Exactly.
We have a few people like that, but we're talking
Some
10
actors.
people. We're talking a few actors. We're talking like you go to Harlem, you have thousands of people that have been recognized over the years.
By them, within their own communities, like a village.
Or out of jazz,
art, writers. Lower East Side, we don't have that. His kids do not have that. It's easy to generalize and talk about different minorities.
Yeah.
Lower East Side is very specific.
We
have the largest prison population in New York State. That's the boys we're talking about.
I want documentation.
So this is a bigger story than
You're going to send me documentation.
Sure, and I'll send you a bunch of people that go to
jail.
There
was the state report that just came out.
I would have thought Harlem would have been well represented.
But that's not correct. And there's more famous people come out of Harlem. Okay. Even in the drug world. You can talk about Nicky Barnes, you can talk about Frank Lucas. That world is known. Lower East Side was like one of the biggest drug markets in the world, and the reason for that was because everybody could come through there. Wall Street, Soho, everybody. Harlem only dealt with Harlem. So the drugs in Harlem, even though it was devastating and awful and terrible, and Nicky Barnes and Lucas and those guys, that was an indigenous population.
Well, there are an awful lot of
Lower East Side, it was the biggest population in the world almost in terms of a drug economy, and there's no famous Puerto Rican drug
I've had
dealers.
a lot of people talking about foster care where they take the kids away from people.
Of course.
And we filled this studio with people here. With Scapetto and those kind of people here in New York City, that kind of thing. And that it was where you get the things where they take the kids away, it was 98% black and brown.
It's tragic.
That are taking them away from their parents.
It's tragic. It's tragic. But we're talking, sort of specifically.
That's an indicator of social class and so forth. Yeah.
And pharmaceuticals, giving them to children. A large percentage of the kids that get those pharmaceuticals, Ritalin and whatever, are poor people.
Yeah, and that's also written again on a large scale. It's all that.
Of course.
So are you optimistic from your experience? You've learned from them. Are you doing more writing? That's one thing. Let's get to that. Are you going to continue
now
to
a
write?
writer.
Are you still doing development, management? No, you're not. You're in the art. You're in writing now.
Well, I'm figuring out my next book.
Okay, that's good. But this is really good. What an experience! It's so beautifully written, and it's so good. And you've lived that experience. You've learned from that, and so forth. Are you? Do you follow the news and so forth?
On occasion. On occasion.
Okay. Are you optimistic for the human prospect? Drawing upon your experience.
Oh my! I just finished a beautiful book called "They Poured Fire from the Sky," or "They Poured Fire on Us from the Sky." Mm-hmm. It's edited by a woman named Judy Bernstein. It's written by 3 of the Lost Boys, Sudan, Southern Sudan, and it's a tremendously saddening book. Right. And you realize how much of the world's population still lives in poverty. How much of the world's population still goes to war. And I mean wars that are moment-to-moment butchery.
Right.
There are 27 million slaves in the world apparently now, the largest number of slaves that there's ever been.
That's just all right out now. There's a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of relationships that amount to slavery that don't
Well,
come
but
under
I'm
that
talking
rubric.
about
Yeah,
moment-to-moment slavery
Okay.
in India and Africa.
India's awful, yeah.
And
they
so
sell young girls
am I
into prostitution.
am I optimistic about the human condition? Ultimately, I think we're going to destroy the planet.
That's a very, very sad
Ultimately,
position.
I think we are. But in the meantime, my responsibility is to live with as much love and compassion as I'm capable of day to day, and responsibility that I'm capable of day to day. And I think that's each of our responsibilities.
Okay.
And if I can say one thing,
please.
There's a man named Emmanuel Levinas, a dead French philosopher.
Okay.
Dead because he's easier to catch up on in that way. And he relates something in a book called Entre Nous. That's the title of it.
Okay, yeah.
And he says he's commenting on God talking to Cain. Cain has just killed Abel. And God asks Cain, "Where's Abel?" And Cain says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And normal interpretations of that are that Cain's mocking God. Levinas says, no, Cain's not mocking God. He's actually asking a question, devoid of ethics. He's asking an ontological question.
Yeah, right.
Am I my brother's keeper?
Right.
And Levinas says, yes, I am. We all are. And I more than anyone else.
Okay, well, could they say...
And that I more than
Yeah,
anyone
right.
else, that asymmetry, he says applies to Clayton, applies to you, applies to me. And if you follow that circle of asymmetry, it creates, I think, a naive, unrealistic, but beautiful world to live in. And that's the one I want to try to live in.
You want to live in there yourself?
Well, and I think that I try. I know that Clayton does. You do in terms of your program.
Well, I'm out to change it.
I'm sure
I want to change the whole world.
But that's exactly that.
The whole world.
But that asymmetry does it. And in I hope a beautiful way. My book is an example of that.
That's beautiful. That thing about Cain, he said, was he in the ability to? How did you say it again? My brother.
It's not a lack of. It's an ontological question devoid of ethics.
Yeah.
Devoid of ethics.
Right, I understand. Is he able to be your brother's keeper? The point I'm getting
Look,
at,
some of us are and some of us aren't.
We've been here 200,000 years, the Homo sapien species, for 10,000 generations as we get, and we're now coming to where we got weapons that are species lethal. We're so clever, we can extend our consciousness.
Right.
We can blow up the whole species, apparently.
Right.
I heard you say
but we can
it's the
feed
end
the
of
whole
world.
species
no,
also.
but we have an equally existentially significant, on the living side, ability to take care of everybody instead of putting up with the slings and arrows of an outrageous history.
I didn't
that
say
we've
blow
had to
up,
live
by
with.
the way. I
You
said
said
destroy.
It would destroy.
Destroy.
But you know,
All
at a
right,
certain
destroy.
level,
I don't think you're going to do it through climate warm or climate change or any of those kind of normal things. It's going to happen if you're going to destroy the species. It would be through weapons, the weapons of the United States of America.
But why don't we talk about what is and what we can do?
The weapons of
and the point is through books you can write. I'll tell you one of the interesting things about my
Great
archives.
book.
If you
Thanks
go,
for coming.
If you go through the archives, you'd be shocked at how many people no longer exist on the Lower East Side. The one thing about pictures is that
It's
they're real.
true with Clayton when he shows you these pictures.
Yeah, you go through the pictures, and there's thousands of people
I know,
that
I've
are no
seen
longer
them.
there.
He's got everybody.
And you see, the
But
thing is, we
Yeah,
can
I know,
speculate
I
about a
know.
larger reality,
I know.
but we have to also deal with
Well,
what is.
I'm
And the
still
book
going to
is
quote
what
Joyce.
is.
History is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. Yeah.
Well, we're
and you're
fully
awake.
awake.
To do that.
And
We are
Clayton.
awake.
Okay, now that's the end. And see, is